Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending, and welcome to our final week, part 13 in our 13-part series of what's new in SQL Server 2012. And this week we are going to take a look at a new reporting and visualization tool in SQL Server 2012, and it's called PowerView. It is essentially a new reporting tool. It's part of reporting services. People who have built reports and reporting services will recognize some of the functionality. It actually resides, PowerView actually resides in SharePoint 2010. So we're going to take a look at this new visualization tool called PowerView that we can use inside of SharePoint. My name is Kevin Goff. I'm the SQL Server MVP, and I train for a company called SetFocus. I'm actually the SQL Server and Business Intelligence Practice Manager and lead instructor. And this is the final week in a 13-part series of new features in SQL Server 2012. Now, the prior weeks are actually available as video downloads on the Microsoft site. So if you want to catch any of the prior weeks, the videos are available for download. Just a quick presentation if you're actually joining this one for the first time. As I said, I'm a SQL Server MVP. I train for a company called SetFocus. We actually offer, in addition to regular training classes, we actually offer a free training site. We have a free training portal called freetraining.setfocus.com that actually has over 100 hours of free training in the .NET, SQL Server, Business Intelligence, and SharePoint areas. So if you want to check out some of our curriculum, our free training site actually has our curriculum content made available for free. Not all of it, but a good bit of it. Just go to that site, freetraining.setfocus.com. My website is www.kevinsgoff.net. There's actually a separate category called Microsoft Webcast that's devoted to this webcast series. And my email address, if you want to drop me an email, is kgoff@kevinsgoff.net. That's kgoff@kevinsgoff.net. Obviously, if you pull down the slide deck from this presentation, you'll have my email address in there. Now we are in the final week. Seems like yesterday, and at the same time seems like quite a long time ago that we started this with the new column store index all the way back in March. But we've almost gone full circle around the new enhancements in SQL Server 2012. So we've looked in the past at new T-SQL enhancements, new enhancements on the integration services and analysis services side. We've looked at what's new in PowerPivot. Last week we took a look at the reporting services integration with SharePoint, and this week we're going to take a look at the newest visualization tool that Microsoft has called PowerView. So that's what we've got on tap for today. Now I'm going to get into some demonstrations in just a minute, but just a little bit of background on PowerView and a little bit of general information on it. As I said, it's a new data visualization reporting tool in SQL Server 2012. It works underneath the SharePoint umbrella. So if you're not using SharePoint, unfortunately, you won't be able to take advantage of this. But if you are working with SharePoint, and specifically with Service Pack 1 of SharePoint 2010, you can utilize this new feature. Now, it actually installs, as we're going to see in a little while, a Silverlight plugin. So the designer that's available inside of SharePoint actually utilizes a Silverlight plugin so that people can go in and design reports. Now, the intended audience for this, certainly not restricted just to power users, because developers can utilize this, but this is intended for business users / power users, the ones who want to be able to take some type of output from the business intelligence semantic model, like data from a tabular model, or even data from a PowerPivot spreadsheet, and build reports against it. So the examples that we're going to look at in just a little while, we're going to look at one that we're going to build from a tabular model, and the other that we're going to build from PowerPivot content. And so we can create basic matrix reports and some charts, actually some pretty interesting visualizations against data that comes from the new semantic model in SQL Server 2012. Now the output that we can create can form a storyboard mode type output. So you can build a SharePoint dashboard that has multiple reports and charts that might tell a story, where you might initially show one chart that's maybe at a high level, and then maybe show a series of more detailed charts or detailed matrices that sort of break down the data a little bit further. So you can create multiple pages and then present them to an end user inside of SharePoint in storyboard mode. Now, people who have built reports and reporting services will recognize some of the functionality that we're going to see. As a matter of fact, some of the general tabular and matrix capabilities for creating row groups and creating column groups actually comes right from reporting services. So some of the people who built reports in BIDS or in SQL Server Data Tools will recognize some of the functionality. Now, a disclaimer here, PowerView does not have every last feature that you'll find in BIDS, that you'll find in SQL Server Data Tools. You know, obviously, if you want that power, those are the tools that you use. But they're more for the developer than for business users or even power users. So that's what PowerView is intended. Now, one interesting feature that we're going to see after we create PowerView content and view it in a SharePoint site collection, you can export the content to PowerPoint in the Microsoft Office family. You can export the report to PowerPoint, and then open the report in PowerPoint and go through a slideshow and interact with the data in that report in the same way that you would up in SharePoint. The Silverlight component actually is available inside of PowerPoint, assuming that you're connected to the database. Obviously, if you send the PowerPoint slide deck to someone completely outside the domain, that they won't be able to interact with it. But if you're still pointing to the data, you can actually interact with the different report filters in the report inside of a PowerPoint slideshow. Very interesting feature that we're going to see. So we're going to build two demos here in just a second. Now, the first one, I'm actually going to do these in reverse order here. The first one I'm going to do is going to be from a deployed tabular model database, and the second one is going to be from deployed PowerPivot spreadsheet. So I'll hop over to my desktop here, and we will get started. Give this just a second to transition. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start sort of from scratch. I'm going to create a new site collection that initially is not going to have anything in it. So over in SharePoint Central Administration, I'm going to create a site collection. And this site collection, I'll call it MS Webcast Power User Content. Nice long name there. So that'll be the name for this site collection. The title, put that in the URL, make that a site collection. And I'm going to utilize the PowerPivot site template. Once again, I could start off with another template and then enhance it, but I want to start with a PowerPivot site template. That's going to involve the least amount of work in getting PowerView content up to that collection. Now, I need to give it administrator. It'll just be on my machine here, administrator. So you can always tell when an application developer, and I'm a developer first more than administrator. You can always tell when a developer is doing a demo, because they just reach for the administrator name for the collection administrator. But this is just a demo. And this will take a few seconds to create. I rebooted my machine right before we started, so this will take a couple of seconds to create. So we're gonna filibuster here. Over in Management Studio, we created a couple weeks ago a tabular model that we built inside of SQL Server Data Tools and then deployed. So I actually opened up Management Studio here. And I want to just reference the database that we're going to be pointing to in this site collection. So, wait for both of these to load now. So again, what we want to do, okay, actually the site collection got created before Management Studio launched. Well, I still want to launch Management Studio anyway because I want to reference the database that we want to build a report against. So I'll just wait for this to open. And I'm going to connect in Management Studio to my analysis services engine, but not against my OLAP server, but against the tabular model. In analysis services, if you want to build both OLAP databases and tabular model databases, you have to have two different server instances. So I'll connect to that server instance. And one of the databases that we built a couple weeks ago was, just as soon as this gets its act together here, and seems to be taking a few seconds, so just wait here. Well, at any rate, I had built a tabular model database using SQL Server Data Tools that pointed to AdventureWorks, and I took a couple of the dimensions and fact tables that were in the AdventureWorks data mart and built a tabular model. So on my local instance of SQL Server, I actually have a tabular model. Okay, finally came up here. I actually have a tabular model that I built ahead of time. It was ADW SQL 2010 tabular. And there were a couple of fact tables in here. There was one for reseller sales and one for internet sales, and broken out by a couple of dimensions that we established. So that was actually a tabular model that we deployed. And so that is sitting on that server deployed as a behind the scenes as a column store database. That actually utilizes the technology from the column store index under the hood. Well, I want to build reports against that in my new site collection. So my new site collection got created. Let me go navigate to it. And I'll see what we have to do to actually create a Power View report against that database. Now we're actually going to have to go through one additional step because we're going to need to create the equivalent of a connection string to that database back here. That database was deployed on a particular server with a particular name. We're going to have to create some kind of connection to it in the new site collection. So there's a new site collection. Well, if you saw from the last 2 weeks when I was in SharePoint, I despise that basic background. I always like to go to some site theme here, and I always like the mission theme. It's nice set of basic colors. And over on the left-hand side, when this comes back, we will see that we have a PowerPivot gallery. Now, you could almost think of this as PowerPivot / Power View content, even though right now there's nothing in here. So there's this new capability called Power View, and it's in SharePoint, but how do we get to it? Well, that's oftentimes a question people ask, even going back several years. You know, when you would get SQL Server, you'd wonder, well, where do you download reporting services, or where do you download integration services? Well, same concept here. How do we get to Power View? Well, in order to get to Power View, we first have to create some type of connection back to that database. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. One way is to create a new document to serve as a new SharePoint document to serve as a connection. Well, I'll go to the Documents area, and I will try to create a new document that will point to that database, and, well, the plot thickens because I get a message saying that's disabled. Well, we have to actually go into the advanced options in this document library to enable the ability to create a new document that'll point to a business intelligence semantic model connection. So, a little bit of a detour here, but an important one. I'm going to go over to Library, and I'm going to go to the library settings for this new site collection. And I'm going to go, as we oftentimes have to do, into Advanced Settings. Now, in Advanced Settings, there's an option to allow the document library to manage different types of content. And right now, that's set to No. I need to turn that on. So I went to Advanced Settings, and I'm turning on the Allow Management of Content Types. Now, for purposes of this demo, I don't need to utilize any other features in here. So that's the only one I'm going to set, and I'll click OK. All right, well, the question is that all we needed to do? Do we need to allow the document library to manage content? Well, I'll go back to my PowerPivot gallery and try under Documents to create a new document. Well, I see one that says PowerPivot Gallery Document, but where's any kind of connection to anything else? Well, there's one other thing I needed to do. Back in the library again, I'll go over to the library settings, and I will go down to the content type here. The only type of content that's available right now is PowerPivot content. Well, I need to be able to access that business intelligence semantic model database, the tabular model database back here. So what I need to do is I need to add from existing site content types. And then I see a list of some of the different site content types that's available in SharePoint in general. And the one I want here is the BI semantic model connection. I want to be able to create a connection string so that I can create a Power View report. So I will add support for the BISM connection and take OK. Well, now I'll go back to my gallery and go to Documents and create a new document. And now I see that I can create a new connection to that tabular model database. So take that option. And it's actually going to save off a connection, sort of in this, similar to the way that you would have ODC files. There's a BISM file that's going to be utilized in SharePoint to actually connect to an analysis service server. So, because the database that we were using was called ADW SQL 2012 Tabular, I'm going to use that for the file name, and for description, I can just say connection to tabular model for AdventureWorks. And then it needs to know the name of my database server. Now, there's no ability to discover that. We got to paste in the server, and there's my server name and the fact that I'm using a named instance for the tabular model. And then the name of the database itself, an ADW SQL 2012 Tabular. So I fill that in for my connection string and take OK. And we now have a document serving as a connection string to that database up here in SharePoint. Well, now we see up in the upper right corner, there's the ability to create a Power View report. That's actually how it becomes available. You could search through here to see how to create a new report. You actually create it from the connection. So I'll take the option here to create a Power View report. And let's see what happens here. Well, that launches a designer that's utilizing Silverlight. It's a Silverlight component. It's running under the control of SharePoint. And this on my machine, I'm limited to 8 gig on my laptop here, so I've got a lot of things running. This will be a little sluggish. Okay, not too bad. Now, if you've built reports before in things like Report Builder or in BIDS or SQL Server Data Tools or any other designer associated with reporting services, you'll probably recognize at least some of the content here. Well, over on the right-hand side, I have the available fact tables and the available dimensions, sort of like when we were in Excel. Well, I'll expand VFACT Internet Sales Summary. And I see the different measures from when we built that fact table to begin with, when we constructed that semantic model. Well, we had a measure here for the reseller sales amount, so I can check that. And that displays the aggregated sales amount. Now, let me stretch this out here. And probably not very easy to see right now, but that's 20 some million. Well, I might want to expand a little bit further down the reseller sales summary. And we had the sum of the reseller sales, so I'll check that. And I've got the reseller sales. Well, I'll come up to the different available dimensions. I'll come up to the geography dimension. And in the geography dimension, we didn't name these, or we didn't rename these from the original column names back in the database, but with things like English country region name and state name. Well, I'll check on the English country region name. Now, right now that's constructing, and we can probably barely see the numbers here. I'm going to zoom it out in just a minute. But that's constructing a very basic tabular report. Well, maybe I know right off the bat that I want to build this as a matrix. Well, up at the top, under Design, there is a drop-down with different visualizations that are available here. And so maybe I want to turn this into a matrix. I'll take the option for matrix, and that's smart enough to put the countries down the left. Well, I can do other things here. I'll go up to the date dimension, and I'll take the year, and I'll put the year. Now, notice down at the bottom, I've got the values, the row groups, and the column groups. Once again, looking a little bit like a combination of what you see in reporting services when you build a matrix, and even what you see in Excel when you create a pivot table. Well, I'll take the year, and I'll drag that down into the column groups. Okay, and I've got a basic matrix that's showing the breakout of sales by year and by country. Now, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go up to the product dimension, and one of the attributes up here is the product category. I'm going to click the drop down for the product category. And I'm not going to make it a row group or a column group. I'm actually going to add it as a tile by. Now, this is something that you don't see in Excel or in reporting services. So I'm going to take the option to add as tile by. And notice what that does. That actually puts the categories up at the top. It's sort of a cross between a slicer and a filter. Maybe not quite as visual looking as a slicer, but it enables us to go through the different options here. So I can go through bikes, I can go to clothing, I can go to components. Now, I'm keeping this very simple. I don't want to get too detailed into any one report here. And I'm going to show some charts in a minute. Just want to start with a basic matrix. Now, maybe this is the only thing that I want to do. And I want to put this back into SharePoint. So I'm keeping this first one simple. Well, I'll put a title up here. I'll put Internet and reseller sales by country and year and product category. And then up in the right-hand corner, there's an option to show filters. I'm going to click on that. And notice how this gives me all of the different components of the report. Well, maybe when somebody is viewing this, maybe they want to exclude one of the years. Maybe we want to exclude 05, or maybe we want to do everything from 07 and beyond. Well, this is a feature that's available both at design time and at runtime. I can actually click the filter capability here, and watch what this is. It's actually a slider. It's actually kind of cool. And so maybe I want to get everything that is greater than or equal to 2007. Well, now the filter here is the matrix is showing just those years. And if I wanted to disqualify some of the countries here, I could actually uncheck them. I'm going to keep this the way it is and then interact with this as a user. So for this first one, I'm keeping it pretty simple here. That's all I'm going to do. Well, I'm going to save this back to SharePoint. So I'll take the option to save. And I'll call this first Power View report. And take save. And it's actually saving it into that PowerPivot gallery. I'll take save. And then I will simply go back in the browser bar. And yes, I want to navigate away from the page. Well, now in addition to having that connection, which would enable me to go create new Power View reports, I now have my first Power View report up here. Well, let's say that we have more novice end users who are simply going to interact with this. They can click on it. And we're in right now what's basically called render mode. It's rendering the output. Now, maybe I want to go into full screen mode and see this a little bit better. I'll click on full screen mode. Well, obviously a little bit easier to read when we're looking at this in full screen. Pretty nice capability. Well, over on the right hand side, okay, the filters aren't showing. Gonna have to look at that in a minute. All right, I'll come back to that later. The user can interact with the user can interact with the different categories here. So the user can interact with bikes, clothing, and components. Now notice how the filter is set for 07 and 08. Okay, there it is. The end user can change that. That's what I was looking for a second ago. So I can click on the filter option as an end user, and maybe, you know what, I want to see all years. So I'll just change this to all years. Or maybe I just, as an end user, I don't want to show 05. Well, I'll bring up the slider bar here, and I'll just simply say greater or equal to 06. And now that report changes. So I've got basic interaction with the different categories here, showing the different countries. And again, if I want to disqualify certain countries, like maybe I want to show just the U.S. and Canada, basically North America here. So I'll just check U.S. and Canada, and that's all that I've got. So pretty nice basic capability. Now notice down at the bottom here, there's a 1 of 1. If there had been more pages, we could actually flip through them in storyboard fashion. The next one we do will actually create multiple pages. So I'm going to keep this first example simple. All right. Now, if I had multiple pages and wanted to flip through them, I could click on the icon down in the lower left corner to zoom in or zoom out and flip across the pages here. A pretty nice visualization capability. Now, watch this. This next feature is really neat. I wasn't aware of this right away until someone. I have a friend. Most people probably know him. His name is Andrew Brust. He's the Microsoft Regional Director and does a lot of presentations on business intelligence and big data in general. And he mentioned this to me a little while back. He said, "Have you ever tried exporting PowerView content to PowerPoint?" And I said, "No. Why? What happens?" And he said, "Well, try it and see what happens, because you get the interactive capabilities." And I thought, well, I went through it and I thought, wow, that is really cool. So I'm going to actually export this report to PowerPoint. And I'll do a save and export here. And save. And I'll save it to the root of my E drive, and I'll just simply call it Test Power View. All right, then I'll come back to my site collection, and I'll go out to my E drive, and I will go out to that file I just created, that test Power View file, and open that up. in PowerPoint. So give PowerPoint a second or two to load. Or 3 seconds, as the case may be. Oh, okay, that opened in the background. I didn't even see that. Well, that initially comes in as what appears to be an image. And we think, okay, that took a static snapshot copy of the report and put it in PowerPoint. So, okay. Well, actually, there's a lot more than that. Let me go into slideshow mode. Now, I'm connected to the original database. Key point here. Because I'm connected to the original database, in the lower right corner, we have the ability to click on that button to interact with this as if I were up in SharePoint. So I'll take the option. Now you might be wondering, can I click on bikes or clothing here right now? You can try, but nothing's going to happen. But if I click to interact, that actually launches the same Silverlight component for Power View running inside of PowerPoint. PowerPoint is actually hosting the Power View component to let me interact with this. Pretty interesting. So I have the ability to change the filters or change the tiles up here. So I can look at bikes instead, and I can go to the filter, and maybe I want to now see all countries, or maybe I want to bring in some more. So I can maybe change this to US, Germany, and Canada. And maybe for the years, maybe I want to show all years. So the end user can bring this into PowerPoint and interact with it, so long as they're still connected. So long as they're still connected back to the database. So if we give this PowerPoint slide deck to somebody and they're outside of any access to the tabular model, understandably they won't be able to interact with it. So pretty cool feature. Now again, if we had multiple pages, we could actually flip through them at the bottom, but we only had one page here. And you also have the ability to bring up a pen or bring up a highlighter if you want to highlight any particular portions of the output here. Okay, so let me come out of PowerPoint, and I'm going to come back to my site collection here, and I'm going to go back in and create a second page in here. So I can click on this to launch it, but then I'll edit it. So I have the option here after it's rendered to go into full screen mode, or I can edit the report, and that'll take me back into the same designer. Now in the designer, I have the option. Maybe I want to bring the height of this, change the height of this, and maybe put something on put something at the bottom here. Maybe we want to build a chart at the bottom that might be used to support some of the data at the top. Or we might want to actually create a second page here. So we can have the option to actually create multiple pages, and I'll get to that in just a second. Now, a couple of other things about this one. If you're wondering, do we have any options to style things? There is a basic editor up here. If you want to change the font, want to change the alignment, change the number format, you have the ability to do so here. I'm working with a pretty small resolution, so we're just going to keep this the way that it is. We have some basic abilities to change the formatting here. Now, if I wanted to put something at the bottom, some type of chart, what I can do is I can reduce the height of this, and I can come down to the fact tables on the right-hand side, and I could start to drag in some of the same measures. But then I think, well, maybe I want to take this data and make a chart out of it instead. Well, what we can actually do, let's find the option here. What we can actually do is make a copy of this and pull it forward. One second here. Seem to have lost that option. Okay, there is an option in here, and seem to have lost it, or seem to be unable to find it. That actually, okay, here we go. We can create a new view to add a view to the report, or we can just simply duplicate the selected view in this report. So that was the one I was looking for. So under New View, what I can do is I can duplicate the view. Now that actually takes what was on page 1 and made it page 2. So I'll show that one, then I'll come back and show how we can put something at the bottom here. So I'm now on page 2, and that duplicated the view. Now maybe in this one, I want to render this not as a matrix but as a chart instead. So I can click the drop down, and notice how I've only got a couple of charts that are available right now. Well, it might be because of the way I've rendered the data and some of the options that I've taken here. So maybe in this second one, I'll do this only for one measure. So I'll come down to VFAC reseller sales, and I'll uncheck the sales amount there. So I'm only dealing with one measure. And a lot of the other charts become available. Now, that's not, you might conclude from that you can only create a chart against one measure. That's actually not true. You can create charts against multiple measures, but because of the way I'd slice some of the other dimensions, only certain charts were available. But now we got more charts are available. Well, I could pick a basic column chart. And let me stretch this out. And that builds a column chart that allows me to still utilize the tile capability across the top here, and it's actually built a stack chart that's showing the 2 years. Well, maybe I want the years to be at the bottom, and maybe I want maybe I want the legend to show the category. Well, obviously I can come over here and basically flip the axis and flip the series. So I can go to the series and I can basically remove it and take the country and instead put that into the year, put that in the series, and then for the axis I'll come up, go up to the date dimension, and this is just basic chart creation at this point, and drag the year down into the axis area. So now I've got the year along the bottom axis and the breakout in the countries in the legend. Now I think I was filtering just on 2. Let me go to the filter and change that to all countries. Well, now that I look at that, maybe I don't want a stack chart. Maybe I just want a regular column chart or some other type of chart. Well, let me click the drop down here, and we can try to see what other types of charts are available. Well, there's a clustered bar chart. Now that wound up putting the years along the left and the sales amount at the bottom, which some people might want, or other people might want to make it vertical. So I'll create a clustered column chart instead of a bar chart. And now I've got something closer to what I want. Now here's where, as nice as we can make this look and have it be part of the storyboard. If you're wondering if you built charts if you can do some of the same things that you can do in reporting services inside of BIDS or SQL Server Data Tools, like set up formulas that are associated with the bars, or maybe set up actions or set up other link capabilities, or put some other expressions into the grouping for the chart or for the measures. Unfortunately, you don't have all of those capabilities here. This is more of an end user, power user capability. So, understandably, you're not going to have every last feature that you would have in the full-blown version of reporting services inside of BIDS or SQL Server Data Tools. Well, we might want to just simply save this at this point, so I'll save it. Take save. And then go back to the site collection. Well, now we see here that there are actually two views into that report. And for anybody who wants to see some really cool capability here, certainly not much on the functionality side, but kind of nice. I can change the view here to a carousel view. And we have the option to actually flip through the available reports in here. So, now it wouldn't be nice to be able to do that all day long. All right, well, let me launch any one of these. And I'll go into full screen mode. Well, now down at the bottom on the left-hand side, we have the ability to flip through the pages here. So again, this can be implemented more in a storyboard fashion style presentation. And again, the end user still has the ability to do things like pull up the filters if we now want to look at all years instead of just 2 years. Okay, and it looks like for accessories, we only had data in 07. I'll change that to bikes, and now we have data for all the years. And the user has basic capabilities here to sort, although in this case, we might not necessarily want to sort by sales amount, because the output here, even though there'll be a reason for it, might not necessarily visually make sense. So even though there are capabilities to sort the axis or sort the data, we may not necessarily want to do that. All right, let me hit escape and come back here. And I mentioned that we could put something on that first page down at the bottom. Let me come back to that first page. If we want to put something down on the first page, we obviously have the ability to size these sections. So I could bring this in. I don't want to do too much here because, again, I'm kind of limited on real estate, but we could theoretically stretch this in to have it as one component in the upper left and build this sort of in a dashboard format. I'll at least put something at the bottom here. So I will come down and I will select from reseller sales. I will pull the reseller sales amount, and I'll pull the freight. I'll show another type of chart that we can build in here. So let me stretch this out. And I will go to the geography dimension, and I'm going to select state province. Now, I have a lot of data by state province. I'm going to go up to the charts, and I'm going to select the scatter chart. Now, the AdventureWorks data is actually pretty predictable on the relationship between sales amount and between sales amount and freight. Notice how the normal slope line is almost identical to that we would see if we could display a slope, is almost identical to here. That's because when they implemented freight, it was always a % of sales amount. So we see that it scales perfectly here. In normal circumstances, the relationship wouldn't necessarily be this tight. We'd have cases where for some sales amounts, the freight as a % of the sales might be slightly different than other instances. But these represent all of our observation points for sales and for the corresponding freight by city. And again, we can put some filters in here. Now, notice how the only things that we can filter on are ones that we had made available to begin with. And so let me come back to the chart here, and I will, at the very least, take the year. So I'll go to the date dimension, and I'll take year, and I have the option I'll add that to the view filter, so that we can look at this for anything 2008 and greater. Well, obviously the numbers go down as a result. Now we do have some ability when we select the chart to format it with a title, set up some labels. Again, not necessarily as much flexibility as you might have in the full-blown version of reporting services, but again, this is intended more for end users. Well, let me save this once again and come back to the gallery. Well, now we see as we flip through here that the display's been updated. So anybody flipping through these actually can get an idea of what the report looks like even before they go run it. That feature actually in some environments, you might think, oh, that's just a visualization feature, actually functionally has some benefit. Sometimes for brand new users in an environment, or maybe for people who are running an environment where there are just so many reports that sometimes it can be difficult to remember which one looks like which. This preview capability can be pretty helpful. All right, well, I built reports against this tabular model. Well, what about PowerPivot? Well, here's something really interesting. I'm going to go back and I'm going to open up Excel. And in Excel, we are going to take a look at the PowerPivot content that we had created a few weeks ago using Excel against that book sales database. So in the drop down here, I actually had a spreadsheet called book sales content that I deployed to another site collection. I'll pull it up here. And what I want to do as soon as this opens up is I want to deploy that to the site collection that we created just a little while ago. And just click past that error. And give this a second to load. And so this was the PowerPivot content that we created a few weeks ago against that book sales database, where we had one page of return dollars and returns percent return goal by category and by year, and then something that broke out sales by author, and then a moving average chart. Well, I want to put that up into my site collection here. Now, because I'm lazy and I don't feel like pointing to that URL, I'm going to go over to the library area here, and I'm going to take the option to connect to Office and add this site collection to the list of SharePoint sites that are accessible inside of Office. So when we take this option here, that actually tells Office that this is a site collection that's available for pushing content. Well, back up in Excel, I will now take the option to save and send and save to SharePoint. And that collection, now sometimes this doesn't show up right away. The locations here are actually ones that were out here before. That was one I did a few weeks ago. Sometimes that doesn't show immediately. So I'll either do this again, or I'll come back to here and take save and send. Let's see if it shows up now. Okay. Yeah, that was one from a couple weeks ago. It's actually not showing it. Sometimes it can take a few seconds. All right, I'll do this one more time, and if it doesn't, I'll just point to it manually. So, try this one more time here, and let me even refresh this. And then push it back up again. And if this doesn't work, I'll just push it up manually. So save to SharePoint. Okay, it's still not showing up. Sometimes it can take a few seconds, so I'm just gonna push it up manually. So I will browse for a location. And the full site collection here, I'll just copy and paste the folder. So we'll do this the old-fashioned way. So come up here, paste in that URL, and then go to the PowerPivot gallery. And I'm going to save that sheet up there. And I don't want to open up the browser because I've already got the browser open. So I'll push up that book sales content as a PowerPivot document. Now that'll take several seconds. Now you might be thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with Power View? Well, actually quite a bit. It's subtle, but actually quite a bit. In a few seconds, it's still updating down here, so I'll just wait until it's finished. In a few seconds, that PowerPivot gallery now contains not just the original connection and our first Power View report, but it also contains the PowerPivot gallery. Excuse me, the PowerPivot sheet inside this PowerPivot gallery. Well, remember what happens with an Excel spreadsheet when we push up PowerPivot content inside of SharePoint. The database is part of the spreadsheet. Remember, that comes along for the ride. What got pushed up to SharePoint is a compressed version of the database, because PowerPivot content is compressed inside of SharePoint, inside of the Excel spreadsheet. Well, I actually have the ability to create a Power View report against that PowerPivot database. So what we deployed up here a minute ago was more than just a spreadsheet. It was actually a PowerPivot database. So in the same way that we could build a report against that tabular model, we can now build a report against the book sales content here. Now, notice that hourglass. That's actually going through and capturing the snapshots of the output so it can display it. That can actually take several seconds or even longer, especially running everything here in standalone mode. That can take several seconds to refresh. I could come back to the main folder here and come back in, and it still might be refreshing. Well, I'll just click on the link in the upper right of that PowerPivot gallery as soon as it refreshes here, and create a new report in Power View. So I'll take the option to create a new Power View report. So this is like creating a report against an existing connection. Well, over on the right-hand side, we see the fact tables and dimensions that are actually associated. They're actually associated with that book sales database. So I can take the sales from FactBook Sales, and I'll bring in the total sales dollars. And I'll actually go up to the back book returns, and I believe we had a calculation for returns percent. And I'll go up to dim books and break that out by book name. Well, I've got a lot of books here, and their sum of sales dollars and their returns percent. Well, I'm going to create a scatter graph out of that. That might be an interesting one. So I will go up to the charts up here, and again, we've got several different types of charts that are available. But I'll look at a scatter graph this time. Well, we see that the concentration of numbers is really all over the place here. We've got some sales that are up into the millions, and then other sales that are 5, 10 million, where the corresponding return percent for the book was much higher. So again, the whole idea of a scatter graph is to see any relationship between data on the bottom axis and data on the y-axis. Now, this is all made-up data. This is not actual data, so the numbers here are kind of meaningless analytically. And once again, we can bring in other options here for filters. So I can go to the date dimension and take the year, click the drop down here, and add that one. We have the option to add that as a tile by to put the years across the top. So if you recall, we could actually do this just for 08 or 09 or whatever year we want to do it for. Or we could instead add that as a uncheck that. And we could add as details. We could add it as a play axis, or we could add it as something along the vertical axis or along the horizontal axis. So I'll take the option for play axis here. And watch this. Want to see something really, really cool? I'll actually click the play button at the bottom there. That's the impact of sales on returns percent or vice versa throughout the years. So if you actually had something chronologically that you wanted to render that way, you actually could. I'm sure there are uses for that. That's actually a pretty entertaining feature. So it is a little bit of a fun element to some of these. Or I could get rid of that as a play axis and maybe add it in as another type of filter. Or I could come up to the customer area and take the customer category and didn't want to implement that as a category. I want to put that in as a okay. I'm not sure why add tile by isn't available there, where it's grayed out, but we might. I'm not sure why that's grayed out, but we could add that as a tile by or as a filter if we want to do let the user break out. So it might be that that the option here for the year is getting in the way. But regardless, I can save this. And I'll call this book sales chart. And then once that's saved, okay, I'll save it a second time. And then I'll come back to the site collection. And now if I flip through that carousel option here, well, there's the book sales chart we just did. Obviously, you'd want to decorate this a little bit further, but we could launch it as an end user and even go into full screen mode. And take the play option here. And again, that same capability, if I had saved that back to PowerPoint and I view that as a slideshow, we get the same thing. So again, if you're a full-blown reporting services developer, you do have to realize that not all of the options that are available inside of SQL Server Data Tools are available here, but there is certainly some very nice visualizations that you can get at the end. So that is a quick look at PowerView. Now there is a brand new book. I don't want to be advertising books here. You know, obviously people can go to Amazon or go to other sites and see what books are available. But there is a new PowerView book that is available. If you go up to Amazon or any other site that sells books and just search on PowerView, there is a new one that was just published very recently that is pretty good. And if you go up to the Microsoft site, you can actually download different demos, different interactive demos of PowerView content. So lots of examples out there in the book I just mentioned and also on the Microsoft site to see some of the other types of reports and charts that we can build with PowerView. There's far more than what I just showed here. This is just simply to give you an idea of what's possible. So coming back to the slide deck here and to wrap this up. Hard to believe that it's been 13 weeks, but we have gone through the different capabilities that are going to be of interest to all different types of application developers in SQL Server. Now I didn't cover a couple of areas that, admittedly, because I am not a DBA by trade, I'm not going to be in a position to really talk about with any level of authority. But for people who are on the administration end, there are administration capabilities that further allow SQL Server to scale environments and to be available to proverbial 24/7 that you might want to take a look at. There's a new feature called Always On that some people might have heard of already that DBAs will want to take a look at. So there are certain areas in the physical architecture of SQL Server 2012 that are also important, but I've tried to focus on those areas that different types of database and application developers are going to be interested in. SQL Server 2012 is a very, very major new feature. I've been through SQL Server 2000 and 2005 and 2008 R2, and so I've seen all the new releases going back to 2000, and all of them were big in their own way. 2005 is when Microsoft really hit the map in a very impressive way with business intelligence. 2008 R2 added a lot in reporting capabilities. 2012, I think, because of the column store index and because of the new semantic model, and even with some of the new features in SSIS 2012, really takes what SQL Server had and simply made it much stronger. There are companies that have gone to SQL Server 2012 simply because of the new column store index. When you have an index that's going to give data warehousing queries a boost by a factor of 5 to 10 or greater, that's pretty significant. And so some companies have moved to SQL Server 2012 just because of the column store index. The new capabilities and integration services. If you are an ETL developer and you liked SSIS before, you'll really like it now. If you had sort of a love-hate relationship with SSIS, and there were days when I sort of felt I was in that category, SSIS 2012 is an improved version over prior versions of integration services. SSIS has always been a good tool. It simply got better in 2012. They tightened up some areas. The whole experience for creating ETL packages simply works better. And on the analysis services side, a lot has been added to make analytic databases a little bit easier to create. Now, we did see that there are some challenges that we run into with that. That sometimes because the new analytic tabular model doesn't offer all of the capabilities out of the box that the full-blown version of analysis services does, sometimes we have to write some DAX code. So there is a learning curve associated with several areas here, and certainly the tabular model and DAX is one of them. but still, this is a fantastic release. I actually can remember my interest level and my excitement level with different versions of SQL Server going back, and I can honestly say that my interest level, my excitement level, and what they've done here is higher than any release that they've put out. PowerPivot is much better in 2.0 than it was in 1.0. And again, the new features on the relational database side, like the column store index and even some of the new T-SQL language enhancements, really make this a very important upgrade. So if you have the ability to take a look at it or to convince your companies to come over the migration path, obviously it's not something you can switch to in a matter of days. It's a much bigger deal to upgrade a database, but it's something that you want to take a look at. I really recommend that people take a look at SQL 2012 because there's a lot in here. So, thank you all for attending. I know some people came in the last few weeks, and others have been watching all along, gotten some good feedback, some good suggestions, and some good comments. So, thank you all for attending. Maybe some point down the road, might do another set of webcasts. Hopefully, we'll see. Thank you very much to Microsoft for giving me the opportunity to talk about these great features, and again, thank you all for attending. So have a good day, have a good weekend, and if you have any questions, again, my email address coming back here is just simply kgoff@kevinsgoff.net. So there's my email address, kgoff@kevinsgoff.net. So feel free to drop me an email at any time. So thank you for coming, and have a good day. Have a good weekend.